there's been a lot of talk in relation to numbers, statistics when it comes to football. Others believe that stats do matter in the game. Others believe that stats don't matter in the game. We've seen a lot of players, pile up their stats, but they are not so much regarded. There are certain players that, do not pile up a lot of stats, but are highly rated. A typical case is the case of Zinedine Zidane. I don't think on top of your head you can make mention of the number of assists Zidane provided.
No.
If it would take a historian to probably
they are not
go back, go back in history, try to compare the number of assists and the number of probably goals and number of chances he created compared to now. A typical case, Frank Lampard. It's so easy.
He has so many stats.
174 goals.
Racking up
it's
over 200
but
goals, over 200
if you look at
assists.
Zidane is highly rated above a player like Frank Lampard. Zidane may not have scored a lot of goals. If you look at a player like Iniesta, he didn't score so many goals. Players like Xavi, they didn't score so many goals, but they are highly regarded. Let's look at this issue of numbers, statistics, and their relevance now. Do they really matter when it comes to football?
I would think, what I would say is that I think the era of data collection is what has brought about all of this. Because if you take football and its inception, like when football really got to the mainstream, that is maybe from the World Cup era and from the Champions League era, hardly were we even considering the best players to be those who scored the number of goals. Until recently that even Cristiano Ronaldo had to usurp Joseph Bacon. Nobody even knew him. But he was the one with the highest number of goals ever scored. The only players that we knew who have scored a lot of goals were Romario, because he played in Europe, were Pele,
Frank Beckenbauer, were able to
Ferenc Puskas. But if you are talking about even the person who has scored most number of goals in the national team, Ali Day, who knew him? Nobody knew him. Chitaru, nobody knew him. But because of the fact that right now we are in the era that we are taking so much consideration with respect to the stats and the goals and the assists, it is what is curtailed the number of goals. If you ask a lot more people who is Max Jardel, how many people know him?
A lot of people don't know Max.
But he was the one who was actually the Golden Boots in 2002. He didn't even get a chance to even play in the Brazilian national team.
There was a time he scored 60 goals in a season.
He couldn't even make it.
Porto.
How many people are even aware that Henrik Larsson has won the Golden Boot? 2001. 2001, Henrik Larsson was the Golden Boot.
The point is, players now are highly rated because of the numbers.
I would say it is lazy journalism. We've entered into the era of lazy journalism.
Why do you think so?
Because, like I was saying, in that era, when we were awarding a player or we were considering a player's exploits, it goes beyond the after the match antics and after the match assessment of who scored the goal and who it had to do with in match, during the match. What is the player's total and overall contribution?
But then, Percy, somebody may ask, how do you then value a player? Because right now, for the value of a player to go high, for a player to be sold 100 million, 200 million, 300 million, you will need to assess his numbers. You need to put into perspective his numbers. How do you say, I'm buying this player for 100 million pounds when there's really no statistical data backing the value that you are acquiring the player for?
Exactly what I'm talking about. That we have entered into the era that we are in, the era of, should I say, lazy journalism, and talk of marketing of a player based on how the public now want to perceive the player to be.
Okay.
If we are talking about the same thing and how players were being assessed in the olden times, by the time Maradona, before he came to Europe,
let me take a seat.
Before he came to Europe, how many goals was he scoring? You know, when he came in 1982 as a youngster,
I don't even know how many assists.
He didn't score a lot of goals.
Maradona provided.
How much did Barcelona pay for him to enter into what you call Barcelona? How many goals had he scored?
They bought him around 10 million euros.
10 million. How many goals had he scored? That is before he even went to the 1986 World Cup. So what I'm trying to say is that now the era we've entered in, not just in football, even in basketball, now it has to do with. Now it is no longer even defensive prowess are not even mentioned anymore. Now it is your stat. How many assists, how many rebounds, how many points. Now the overall contribution has been taken off. So in this era, like I said, How many now? You and I may not even watch the match. In the end, we just scroll to live score. We check who scored the goals, who made the assist, who made the errors. That's all.
So Percy, this is what I think about this whole stats and whether we should consider that in rating a player. I think that it's got to do with dispensations.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
So in the 80s, 70s, even in the 90s, early 2000s, not so much attention was given to numbers.
The overall
basically because it wasn't really a priority back then, and probably we didn't have the set tools. Now football has become very scientific in its approach. Football has become very technical. Football has become very... you need to... For me, I think that it's very important because, like I was giving you a typical example, how then do you value a player? I want to acquire a striker. I want to acquire a creative midfielder. I need to know what the creative midfielder is giving me. So I need to approach what he's giving me based on the numbers that I'm able to assess him by. Listen, if back then, a lot of people really did not consider Ronaldinho's numbers before ranking him as the world best player.
Yeah.
It was just his sheer ability to do some of the unthinkable on the pitch. Nobody cared how many
how do you rate that?
How many goals Ronaldinho would score on the pitch. You cannot rate skill.
No.
You cannot say your skill is at 10%, 20%, 100%. It's so difficult. But it was that pleasure that Ronaldinho gives you. It was that wow moment Ronaldinho would give you. Those were the things people look at in ranking him and rating him. But now it's so crucial. Now, if I want a creative midfielder, a guy who will play behind my strikers and be able to open up defenses and provide assists, I need to know what he has done. Let me finish. I need to know based on the numbers. If a typical example, people may not really... I've heard a lot of people think that, yes, Jude Bellingham is scoring a lot of goals, racking up a lot of numbers. But if you look at his impact in a game, he doesn't necessarily wow you. I've watched him throughout this season. He's that kind of player that pops up at the right moment. He does the right things at the right time. He's a typical case of Frank Lampard.
Yeah.
Jude Bellingham, I see Jude Bellingham as a typical case of Frank Lampard. You can watch Frank Lampard in an entire season and on top of it, you cannot remember any wow moment, any wow thing that he did. But he will pop up at the right time. He will be in the box at the right time. He would score those crucial goals at the right moment when needed. But those are the things that would push a team to the next level. Those are the things that would give a team recognition. So for me, I think that the dispensation we are in now, it's not about lazy journalism. The dispensation we are in now, it is what it is. It is what the fans want. It is what we are able to look at and rate this player. People are saying the next bunch of world best players, you mentioned Jude, you mentioned Vinicius, you mentioned Haaland, you mentioned Kylian Mbappe. These are the four guys that probably people are looking at to annex the crown for Messi and Ronaldo. But on top of your head, you may not rate Erling Haaland high because he's not your flamboyant Ronaldo. I'm talking about Luis Nazario Ronaldo kind of striker. He's not your Zlatan Ibrahimovic kind of striker. He's not that aesthetic striker. But he will get the job done. He'll pop up at the right time. 56 goals in 58 games. Outrageous. 23 goals in 22 games for Norway. Unthinkable. Not even Ronaldo could rack up those numbers. But a lot of people do not rate him because they think, oh, it's about the numbers, it's about the stats. But again, I repeat, in the dispensation we find ourselves now, it does matter.
Now, I was trying to tell you something that, and you know, it is with this.
We're getting so involved in the conversation that we stop playing.
You know, with this statistics,
yeah,
it is the reason why there are some, especially positions on the field, they are either becoming extinct or they are actually becoming redundant, or they are not becoming efficient. For instance, the position that Bellingham plays, a typical number 10. If we am to give you the list of number 10s and you want to bring maybe Bellingham,
he's not like your schema.
I don't even want to go so far. I'm just probably starting.
He's not your typical
so
schema.
For maybe a person like maybe Kaka, maybe Rui Costa, maybe Figo, maybe Riquelme. these players did not give you.
Kaka wasn't even so much of it. Kaka was more of a Mazella. So he operated between the 8 and the 10.
So let me just give it like Riquelme, like Figo, like what do you call
Pablo
it?
Aimar. These guys on top of your head, they don't even have the numbers to back them.
You can put Ronaldinho there because, of course, he could play the left wing and that. But you see, as a result of that, now if you are told to mention number 10s in the system, if we have Modric retiring, he's one of the few classical number 10s we have left. Even with him, Real Madrid tries to play him as a number, but he's still player. So if you have him retiring, I am trying to maybe Neymar too.
No, Neymar lately has evolved more as a winger.
So let's say you have Modric, and of late I've seen Lucas Paqueta. He's trying
Lucas
to.
Paqueta
He's trying to.
Is your old-fashioned.
So right 10. Now, how many number 10s? And you realize that most of the Ballon d'Or winners, or most of these recognized players, majority of the winners were number 10s until we had the Messi Ronaldo era that we had most of them trying to maybe bring goals into it. So the influx of the stats and the influx of the goals and assists is taking the shine away from, let's say, a typical defensive midfielder, how he's supposed to operate. Because even defensive midfielders, until you
I don't even know Binger's numbers.
Upon everything that Rodri did, the only thing that when you ask you that, what did Rodri do? He's a class player. That is what you are going to say. You bring the goal factor in to make a case for him that it gives him the chance to probably stand up for Ballon d'Or. But with his exploits and being the shield for the team, we hardly talk about it. Casemiro, for everything he did, we will never talk about it.
So for me, and you made mention of the classical number 10. Again, I'll go back to my earlier point that the game has evolved. Now, positions have evolved over the pitch. Even how we view formations and tactics have evolved. Your typical 4-4-2 diamond. When was the last time you saw a team play the typical 4-4-2 diamond?
Mourinho is still working with
When was the last time you saw a team play your typical Catanaccio style? Teams' tactics have evolved. And whenever tactics evolve, it means that the very elements that make the tactics are evolving. Because right now, you can have a player like Kevin De Bruyne, who could operate in any of the... He could play as a Mezzala, he could play as a wide winger, he could play as a 10,
even
he could play as a false 9, he could play as an advanced 8. So we do not have the old-fashioned positions. Back then, we call them, this guy played as a number 7. This guy played as a number 11. And he will stick to that number 7 role. His duty is to just run down the byline, cross the ball, he's done. And number 11, left-footed winger, go down the byline, cross the ball, he's done. That old-fashioned positions have evolved. Now, coaches expect players to join attack, to join defense. And so, technically, the abilities of players are evolving over the years. So for me, honestly, I wouldn't fault anybody if you want to put so much on statistics, because that is the terrain we find ourselves in now. People will talk about Jude Bellingham's numbers, and because of his numbers, they would rate him high. People will not rate a player like Pedri. What Pedri does, Pedri and Gavi, what they do for that Barcelona team is akin to what Iniesta and Xavi have done for that Spanish and Barcelona team. But nobody talks about them because they do not have the numbers to back them. But everybody is talking about Jude Bellingham because he's popping up at the right time, because that is what people care about now.
Don't you think that something like this it will actually tend to overshadow talent? Because
it will not overshadow talent.
Like I was saying, you see, one of the reasons why football actually became very popular over most of the sports was the flamboyancy that some players had to bring out. And one of the reasons why a player like Maradona would always, it doesn't matter the one World Cup, was the skill set he brought.
It's the joy he made people feel.
Now, football,
in terms of
football is, tell me the last time you watched a football match and a player wowed you with the skill. And
very recently, Manchester United against Manchester City, Bernardo Silva. he toyed with
what I'm trying to say is, those things that actually made people love football, the Peles, the Maradonas, the Cruyffs, the Ronaldinho, the Zidanes. Now, since the era of Messi. The last era was Messi. We had Neymar coming in and doing some, but this time it's a very robust, robotic stereotype.
You bring up the Messi thing, and to conclude the discussion, let's look at this. Messi, Ronaldo. Is that the reason why, stats have become so imperative? Because whenever Messi Ronaldo comparison comes up, the first thing is numbers. Ronaldo has scored this number of Champions League goals. He's done this. Messi has done this. In a season, he scored 90 plus goals, breaking Gerd Muller's record. Do this whole brouhaha about who is the great, for me, I've told you my stance on this greatest of era, but this whole brouhaha about Messi Ronaldo, is that due to the stat bit of this era?
Because that is the only way you could peg them. Because
so then why do you consider somebody
I'm coming.
I'm
coming. With Messi and Ronaldo, each of them came with, you see, comparing them to the old eras, if a player pops up that season, it is so obvious. It is very difficult for you to bring another player to come close to that player.
But there was a season we had Ronaldo, Neymar, Ronaldo, Zinedine Zidane,
and whenever you had Ronaldo popping up, you see, Ronaldo, I don't want to go, but had it not been for the injury he had,
established,
he would have ragged like 6-7.
He's a different player.
So it was his injury that gave a chance for Zidane and the rest to come in and rack up. But you knew that when he was on top, there was absolutely no player.
So do you think that it's fair? Messi is a different type of player from
Ronaldo is a different type of player.
Two different players.
So at the end of the season,
so it's fair to, do you think that it's fair to compare them using their numbers?
For them, they were all very, very efficient for their teams in the season. This one will win the league, this one will win the Champions League. This one was very efficient. So the only thing that you could peg them with is the little stats that would differentiate the two of them. Because in an era that one win the Champions League, unlike Haaland's Champions League, that okay, he actually scored goal, but in clutch times, he wasn't even the one. But you know that with these people, when they win the trophies, they are the main spear. So the only thing you can use for the two, they are two extraordinary breeds we might never get again.
I don't think we
so. For them, the only thing you could use to peg them was those fine thin lines between them, the stats that you can use to separate them.
So that's why I'm saying
but they are the different
based
ones.
on the era,
you can't use those from Mbappe and Haaland.
The Pedri Bellingham thing, people have in Spain. It's one of the biggest conversations out there. Who would you want in your team? A Pedri who is so brilliant, is like an Iniesta. He does a lot of things that people may not rate. Like Rodri. Yeah. Rodri is like the heartbeat of City. Yeah. When he's out, you can see
7 games unbeaten. He goes off. They lose.
So if you had a Pedri, if you had a Bellingham, who would you go for?
Listen, I would quickly. I'm coming. I would go for a Pedri when I have another player to do the finishing for me. If I am going for Pedri, it means I have a Lewandowski who is there to finish up for me. But then,
all things being different, who would you go for?
But in a Real Madrid setting, when there is no Karim Benzema and Rodrigo,
let's say all the dynamics are the same, who would you go for? Pedri, Bellingham.
You just said that we are in an era that I want more goals. I want more assists.
I never said you are in an era.
No, you just established the fact that in this era that we are in, we expect you to give more.
Who would you go for?
Another player can do Pedri's work. I'll go for Bellingham.
Likewise, I'll go for Pedri. Another player can do Bellingham's work, because I think that I miss seeing the Iniestas do the things.
You won't see them again because they are gone.
That blow your mind, yet they go under the radar. I miss seeing the things Rodri does for City, but nobody recognizes that. And Bernardo Silva and Pep Guardiola in a post-match presser said that he's the most important player in the team together with other players.
How many most important players does this guy have?
Oh, what he's trying to say is the value Bernardo Silva gives the team.
So many important players.
You cannot buy on the market. You can buy an Erling Haaland. You can buy a Kylian Mbappe.
You can't buy Erling Haaland. A player gives you 56 goals and you are rating the midfielder.
That's where
he was trying to just play.
You can buy a lot of Erling Haalands on the market. But guys, this is one of the brilliant conversations out there that a lot of people have. We want you to join in the conversation. The question we are asking is that, do stats really matter in the modern game? You think that stats should be considered when you are rating a player above another player, when you are rating a player? And We want you to join the conversation on Sport 101. If you have not subscribed to the channel, make sure you subscribe to the channel Sport 101. And today we shot, as always, from the Socks Hub at the Takrade Mall. We are enjoying, a pool here. Sadly, I'm not that good at pool, Percy, I do not know about him, but they have everything sports here. If you want your computer games, video games, just come here, enjoy their meals. Great ambience. This is Sports 101.